The March 3rd, 2009 meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I guess I can take
Okay, before I get into the announcements, Mr. CAO, it has been brought to my attention that we're violating a law with the orientation of the flags. Our Old Glory should be the rightmost flag in this chamber. So can we have the county council?
Depends which way you're
No, the rightmost. Well, it should be higher. I don't. Well, we may have to hire a committee to figure this out.
Are you looking at the U.S. flag code? Is that what?
Yeah, the U.S. flag code says emphatically that the Old Glory should be at the far right.
Okay.
So
well,
I don't.
Right over there.
No. I'm talking about from the orientation viewpoint, from the viewpoint of the flag, it should be on the right. So.
We have to agendize this before we act. So.
Yeah, okay. I think you're right. But next week...
Mr. Chairman, the flag will be in a different location next week.
We have a contingent of law enforcement people here, and I don't want to be arrested for violating any laws. All right. We have a few announcements here. The agenda item 6A is an addendum to the agenda. It's approval of a will serve and annexation agreement among the County of Calaveras and the State Administrative Office of the Courts and the San Andreas Sanitary District, under which the Sanitary District will provide wastewater services to the proposed adult detention facilities and courthouse. Okay, and then we have also an item on this agenda, item 8, calling for a closed session. It's been brought to my attention this morning that session has been actually misscheduled for this agenda. We're going to cancel that and reschedule it for next week. Item 8, which is a closed session pertaining to conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. So anyway, that particular item will be held over, canceled for today and held next week. All right. Going on to the consent calendar, we have 3 items this morning, some minutes, correspondence, and a resolution. Things on the consent calendar are usually very somewhat inconsequential in their controversial nature anyway, so they can be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. If somebody wants to pull an item off, it can be pulled off. So I'm asking anybody in the audience wish to pull anything off? Anybody on the board? If not, do I have a motion?
Move the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it's 5-0 for the consent calendar. Okay, we have, I think we've almost waited in time for the 9:10 public comments, so I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty to ask for public comments at this point. Good morning, Mr. Clapp.
Hello, I'm from Belly Springs. My name's Clyde. Anyway, I have 2 things I'd like to ask, maybe some of them enlighten my mind. But last week I was here, and a gentleman from the Water District was sort of blaming you for us going to lose our water. Now, I can recall going back a year or so to a meeting that CCW had, and they raised our rates, and they also started forcing us to use less water, because the more you use, the more they charge you. And I see buildings uptown that really can't be occupied. Now, the building's there, so apparently you guys allowed them to go in, but what the problem was is the cost of the water hookups. We lost Strings and some other businesses that went to Jackson. So I think that CCW ought to look at their own policies on what their problems is, because of the 30 years I've been here, is CCW has squandered Calaveras County's resources. It's unbelievable. From tens of millions of dollars on the North Fork project that they lost in the stock market to it just goes on and on. So I think that CCW ought to look at themselves and not be blaming this board or anyone else for their trouble they're in. And they ought to really, if nothing, this board ought to take it away from them and say what resources we have before they let them use the rest of the water. Second one is this year there's been 2 projects came up here, and it was for public comment. And then last week there was a group of people, citizens here, and they seemed to be concerned about a project that wasn't even on the calendar, but yet I didn't see any of these people during public comment for the 2 projects that's here. In fact, one was that same day, and they all stormed off. And so I thought I'd get lively here for a while because I seen all the group here, and I go, well, maybe they're here for this other project. So I really wonder, what their motives are, to be honest with you. I mean, because it don't seem like it was for what they were saying, because there's 2 other projects that have been a lot more, for seeming like some of the concern was the construction. Well, one project had 100 homes. I didn't see a single person here for that when that came up the first year. So I would just, maybe I missed something or I didn't see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clapp. I want to take a moment to interject that CCWD, as I understand it, came into being back in 1949 or so as a result of a countywide election. So it would not be in the jurisdiction of this board to make any action that would take any responsibilities or give any responsibilities to CCWD. They're a separate jurisdiction, different agency. So just for clarification for those in the audience and on the TV. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Krista Thompson. I'm the Mental Health Services Act Coordinator for Behavioral Health. I have several announcements, but I will keep it to 5 minutes. I'm a little worried that Russ has enforcements on his 5-minute rule. We have several good announcements. For starters, our workforce education and training plan that the board supported back in November was approved on Friday by the Department of Mental Health. So that means that we should be getting funding for that plan sometime within the next few months. We're very excited about that. That plan included funding for scholarships, tuition reimbursement, as well as community college programs and administration for a master's level program that was co-sponsored by several small rural counties in our area. So we're very excited about that. We are also submitting to the Department of Mental Health tomorrow, a prevention and early intervention plan, which was formed with the input and support of the community. I'm very pleased about this plan because it was developed by the community, and I just heard from the Department of Mental Health this morning. We submitted the plan for kind of a pre-review. It's kind of an arduous process when you submit it. It goes through this very lengthy review process by several committees, and so it helps to kind of send it in for kind of a pre-review. They tell you what to look out for, and I heard back from the head review person, and they've been completely overwhelmed with plans and very frustrated by the budget cuts and reorganizations going on there. And he called me this morning and said that he took our plan home with him over the weekend, and he said that reading our plan made him remember why he came to work for the Department of Mental Health. And he said he was so impressed by our community and the way our community came together to make this plan happen, and just how it was represented in the plan. And this plan is recommending funding for a parent support project that will be available to anyone in the community, no matter what their financial status is, no matter what kind of insurance they have, no matter where they live, what district they're in. And we're very pleased about that. It's also funding a suicide prevention project, as well as a grandparents project, which is supporting grandparents and other relatives who are raising children that are not their own. So we're very pleased about that. We're also going to be having a public hearing, which is open to the public, to do a final review of that plan, and that will be at our Mental Health Board meeting this evening at 4 p.m., and that will be at our Behavioral Health Services Annex at 373 West St. Charles, and that's in the Umpqua Bank Pizza Factory complex here in San Andreas. Our third piece of good news is tomorrow we'll be posting for public review our technology plan, which will be providing funding for our clinical workstation, which is kind of a technical term for our electronics records keeping system, as well as some client supports, some electronic client supports like computers for their use, some separate internet access so that their computer use doesn't affect the county secure network system, as well as some staff support. We've added several new staff over the past few years, and they're on some antiquated computers, and we need to get them up to speed so that they can do their jobs better. So that plan will be posted tomorrow for 30-day review on our Network of Care website, and that's calaveras.networkofcare.org. So we invite the public to look at that tomorrow, and it'll be available there for the next 30 days, and any comments may be directed to me. I'll just give my phone number at this point. It's 754-6525, and they can ask for me. And so we'll be back next month and let you know when our next public hearing is, but we're very pleased with our progress, and despite the budget cuts, we're still hopeful that these plans will be funded, and we thank the board for your ongoing support.
Thank you very much, Krista. The chair doesn't limit good news to 5 minutes. So.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Krista Thompson was saying. I'm on the California Mental Health Planning Council. It's a 40-member body that reviews suggestions and projects to make recommendations to the mental health director for the state of California. I've been on that board for 10 years, and one of the staff people for the Planning Council just recently recognized Krista Thompson for her work in the mental health field and on these kinds of projects that she has sent to the state. I serve on one of the committees that reviews these plans, and it's challenging for counties to get these plans approved. I think they're doing a much better job about it than they have in the past. The other thing I wanted to say is that Krista has become a household name in the state of California in mental health circles. People are calling her all the time, and she's really been a trailblazer for the Mental Health Services Act as the coordinator for this county, and I think she needs to be commended for that. And I've been on the mental health board here in the county for 11 years, thanks to Tom and the rest of you reappointing me every 3 years. And the things that have been going on in the mental health department in this county have been amazing. And I attribute a tremendous amount of that to the mental health director, Rita Downs. She has transformed the mental health department in this county, and it's a really strong and supportive department for people who are mentally challenged. And I just wanted to let you folks know. I happen to be sitting here and hearing this, so I just wanted to chime in.
Just for the record, that was Mr. George Fry.
Good morning. My name is Rosemary Wilson. I live in McCullamy Hill. I'm also a member of the Mental Health Advisory Board and the Quality Improvement Committee there. And it's just been a pleasure to see or try and keep up with Krista when she has all of these different programs on the go, and has really done such a good job communicating with the community, with the Mental Health Board, and with the state that I hear can be quite challenging at times. I also want to say something else, and that is that I've become involved with the Farm to Family program that is setting up community gardens, spots in farms, and other sites throughout Calaveras. And I had the pleasure of going to Humbuck Creek Farm on Friday with 5 or so clients of behavioral health, and we had a good time breaking ground and digging up blackberry bushes from Steve's site, and planting and sowing seeds in the greenhouse ready to plant once we have the ground ready to accept the seeds. So that's just another thing that mental health is doing in cooperation with the larger Farm to Families project. And it's really fun working with Krista and Rita and seeing all these new things happen over the last 3 or so years, thanks to Rita and the Mental Health Services Act, Prop 63 as it was once called. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Good morning, Marita and gentlemen. I'm Rosemary Faulkner. I'm here this morning with the Calaveras County Historical Society. We have 2 museums, both on your property, the courthouse downtown, as well as the Red Barn right here at the corner. And I'm here this morning really to talk for the Red Barn. We contracted with you about 6 years ago to operate that as a museum, and we have so many artifacts and so many valuable things in there that we keep storing in the stable, being we don't have horses. And the stable doesn't even resemble the stable anymore. Anyway, we had plans originally to expand with a new barn on that pad that's east of the barn, your barn. And we have the finance now, and we would like to build on that plot. I brought you some pictures. Would you take these down?
Jason, that feedback that we're hearing, is that something we can... It's the podium mic?
If you'll give us permission, I'm kind of, shall I say, sounding you out this morning. I want to know how you feel about it, and then if we need to come back to the board on the consent agenda, we'll do that. Or if you give me a favorable indication this morning, maybe we can take our plans directly to the building department. Our plan at the present time is to build an additional barn out there that will very much resemble the carriage house at Angels Camp. But it won't be that long, and it'll be wider. I think we're thinking about 54 by 60. It won't be any cost to the county. We have hoped to do this from the very inception of starting the Red Barn Museum. So we've stubbed in the water and the power on the east end of the barn. We're actually And the barn, incidentally, if we get your permission, will belong to the county, but of course with the reservation that you'll let us expand our museum there. So we'd like to continue that agreement. One of the artifacts we have in the barn was built in the gold rush. It's a hand-pulled hook and ladder that was built in a blacksmith shop in McElmy Hill. It's all wooden, except for parts of the wheels and the axles. And it's probably the most valuable thing we have there. We need to move it into a metal building in case of a fire. So that's just one of the many things that we're thinking about doing. So do you have any questions? How would you feel about us starting to build another structure?
What is the building material on the new barn?
It's planned to be metal and have a water, sprinkler system in it and a concrete floor and hopefully a working blacksmith shop. But it'll be a metal building and it will resemble the barn as much as possible.
Okay, there would be no wood on the sides, et cetera, then?
No
It would be
wood.
all metal?
All metal.
Okay.
That's the least expensive construction right now, and of course, it's fireproof and more practical.
Okay.
Any other supervisor comments on Rosemary's persuasion here?
Well, while we can't make decisions at this, on this agenda item, I would certainly like to lend my support for this. I know we have a lot of things that are exposed to, first, that people can't even see because they're all piled up in too small a space. So and we have many other things that people would like to donate, but without display area, remain in private barns and garages throughout the county. So this is the expansion of space, I think, would be very helpful, and to consolidate it on this site is even
Well, I'm glad you're aware of that, Steve, because we have things all over the community that people are waiting to give to us. And if you wait too long, you lose it.
Exactly. So this is good planning on the part of the society, and I look forward to seeing it built.
Well, thank you.
Do you have a square footage on the new building?
Yes, our plan right now is 54 by 60 because that's what would fit well on the pad that you've already sort of allowed us to have. That was the plan 6 years ago.
Okay, if there are no further board comments, I just have one observation, Rosemary. Considering the historical authenticity of the Red Barn with the board and bat, I am not. I don't really favor this, the cladding of this particular barn. Maybe this is just for a conceptual representation, but there are a good many things that have been built down in the Copperopolis Town Square, which of course you know is thematically supposed to be a 150-year-old old town or something, and they've used a corrugated metal that they encourage it to rust, so that it looks like it's been there forever. I don't know whether your committee would consider looking around at options that stylistically would be more in keeping with the old surfaces on the old barn. I just, it kind of gives me a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to have this 21st century modern building concept on this barn juxtaposed to the old barn. I'm not saying that I'm diametrically opposed to it, but just as a suggestion, if it could be kept more in keeping with the theme, that would be.
If Supervisor Thomas, if our chair is looking for rusty metal, we are exporting tremendous amounts of that from District 2 and be glad to.
Well, this is a particular kind of metal that only rusts to a certain point, and it's I think they call it Core-10, Gary, or something. It's it gets a patina and then stops rusting, as I understand it.
Well, the metal that, we have gotten an estimate, so we know about where we stand in terms of whether we can afford this. This is that powder-coated metal that is alleged to not rust. But it will look as much like the present Red Barn as possible, including windows and so on.
I see.
And we would present architectural drawings to you for your approval.
Okay.
We just need a sense of whether or not you will give us permission to put your barn behind the Red Barn.
I am supportive.
I'm supportive also.
What did we agree to 6 years ago? I mean, I don't want to just say, oh, yeah, because we don't have, I mean, I don't remember. I remember all the negotiations about the barn and all that. Conceptually, I don't have a problem, but I don't remember those details, and I don't want to just commit to something. Rosemary?
Well, we're really not asking you for a firm commitment today. We feel that we probably need to be on your consent agenda at a future date and bring you more specific plans before we go to building, so you'll know exactly what we're thinking about. But we don't want to go to that expense if we don't kind of have a feeling for where you are with us having another barn. And I seem to have enough opinions in my favor that I feel like we can go ahead.
You can still count to 3 then. So
We'd like to have your
that's
blessing.
great. So,
Well, I guess I feel like we should have the CAO at least look at what, you know, what it was we committed to. I mean, and I think, yeah, the board has always supported the Red Barn and all that, but there had been a master plan for the county. I just want to make sure that we're not going to say something and then go down the wagon wheel path and say, oh my gosh, you know, we were going to put the courthouse behind the Red Barn or animal shelter, and that's all I'm saying. That's easy to sit up here and say it's wonderful, but I think we just need to remember what we looked at, and that's all I'm asking the
That's
CAO
very
to do.
understandable. And that's why I'm asking you if you'd like us to be on your consent agenda with more specific plans, or do you want us to go right to building and then review what we're doing?
That is very good with me. I think, for me, I would just like it to run through the CAO's office.
Okay.
And if he determines that, yeah, something needs to come on consent because it's county land, fine. If he's saying there's a little glitch here, then let the CAO's office and the Historic Society work through a glitch if there is one. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, in closing, I want to say to you that barn is 140 years old. We are trying very hard to preserve your barn, and that's what was in our contract. And when we first started this endeavor, the barn was earmarked to be torn down. And so I think we've preserved a fine historic structure there, but we just need to expand a bit. So that's where we are. Well, thank you for your time, and we'll present something to Mr. Lawton very soon, and then you let us know where to proceed. And I like your ideas about copper. I've been there.
okay.
And it's very nice. But like I say, we want this structure to look as much like the existing barn as possible, but be more safe with being
Okay.
metal.
I'll be anxious to see the plans as they get developed. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Tim Laddish from Sheep Ranch, and I hope this is the best of all possible worlds. I've got good news. It's less than 5 minutes. Concerns an artifact, which is an entire town. We have Sheep Ranch has a vision now as part of the general plan process. We have a relatively large percentage of the Sheep Ranch residents right here. Less than half. We first met regarding the general plan in June of 2007, and it became clear that the community then was, as it is now, quite interested in preserving the nature of Sheep Ranch as a rural community, uncommercialized, with, you'll be glad to know this, without any great demands for increased services. One of the main things was that we'd like to keep the roads as they are. And in fact, one member of the community suggested that we ask the county not to repair the potholes in order to control speed bumps, but that was not a part of the consensus. Anyhow, as part of the general plan process, Sheep Ranch, on January 30th at a community meeting, we had a long evening of discussions and ended with consensus without dissent that this is indeed, without putting quotation marks around the word, this is our vision as to what we want Sheep Ranch to be, and we hope it's plays a helpful role in your reaching a general plan in the long run. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Laddish.
If I could be permitted just a quick comment on this. I want to thank the people of Sheep Ranch for being the first unanimous vote in this process. There are a total of 8 communities in District 2, all 8 of which are participating in this endeavor to define their town interests and try to reach some form of consensus. The votes have been taking place in each of the towns beginning last month, or actually the month before when McCullough Hill came here. There are votes scheduled in Mountain Ranch, Wilseyville, Glencoe, West Point, and Paloma for later this month and early next, and those documents have been prepared by committees that have worked for as many as 3 years. They're simple, straightforward, and each is reflective of the wishes of the people in that town, so they're very different. Each one is different. But this town is characterized, it's the last open range town. I'm pretty sure it's the last downtown in California that's defined as open range, where the sheep run wild, the dogs are penned, and the people live free. So, the idea of deeper potholes was seriously discussed, I believe, during the course of this. So it's a town with a certain character, and it will remain so if these plans are accepted and incorporated into our planning process. Very much appreciate the effort, and thank you for coming.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ed Ballard with the Sheriff's Department. A while ago when we hired Kitchell to be our project manager, part of what we were going to do was give updates as we go through the project. I provided you with a pamphlet earlier. We wanted to keep them short and descriptive as to where we're at, and things are moving along as they should be. I also additionally, to keep the public informed of where we're at, and there's also additional pamphlets up here for anybody who would like to look at them. If you have any questions, I'd be glad.
How are we doing on the architect's selection?
Yesterday, sir, we had our first meeting with them to discuss the scope of work, and March 13th, I believe we have we'll be discussing their fee and seeing where they are and continuing with those negotiations.
So I have not been made aware that there's, last I heard you were down to a group of 4. So.
Yes, sir. We held approximately a week and a half ago, we held the final interviews with the 4 firms that were on the short list. Dewberry, PSA Dewberry came out number 1, and those are the persons that we're in the process of negotiating the architectural agreement with.
Where are they located?
They have offices in Sacramento, primarily out of the East Coast, but they do have offices in Sacramento, and that's where their project team will be based out of, is Sacramento for our project if negotiations are successful and we select them.
Okay, so if negotiations on their fee go sideways, we might go to number 2 then? Is that what you're saying?
We would go down to number 2, yes.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Art.
Good morning.
you have any comments for us?
No, I think we've made a lot of progress. We not only have the AE firms that we've been dealing with, but it's also surveyor and geotechnical, and we've received proposals from both and have shortlisted that down to one surveyor and then 3 of the geotechnical we need to discuss further with what they've submitted. So there's a lot that we are working on that we will be sending to the board for approval in the very near future.
Okay, I apologize for that squealing. I don't know what we can do about that. If you stand closer, does it make it worse, or test? No, it doesn't. That's weird.
There it goes.
Okay. The board has in the past expressed a kind of a sentiment that we want to select local vendors and professionals as much as possible. When you mention your surveyor and geotech, I think that if I ask the board to nod their heads if we're still interested in trying to hire local people as much as possible, just like to interject that into the selection process again. So
Certainly, and on the surveyors, we had 2 local firms out of, I believe there was a total of 22 people that said that they intended to respond. 2 of them were local. We're down to, on the surveying, a local person that we're looking at hopefully negotiating and hiring with them. And on the geotechnical, we're down to 3, and 1 was local.
okay.
So we're doing our best as to make sure that we hire local persons if they're qualified and they can do it.
Okay. I think the question that all of us would like some assurance on, can we still afford to build a building for the money that we've got budgeted? Have you looked at that, Art? That was part of your original?
We have looked at it. Originally, we were talking about 87,000 square feet for the jail and 48,000 for the administration building. There has been a little bit of scope creep into this that has made where we're at now with conceptual designs a little larger than what they need to be. Once we get the architect on board, we'll be able to bring those back into the size they should be and back into budget.
They'll be the size where they should have stayed. Like you said, we've got a little scope creep going on and exceeded our initial architectural programming. So we're going back to that, and we'll work with that as we planned.
So that means that the gun range is probably out then, huh?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, darn. Anybody else have any questions?
I like this. Thank you very much for doing this. I think it's good not only for the board, but for the public, so I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any comments under public comments this morning? Oh.
I just wanted to inject a little humor. I wanted to know if any of you supervisors recognize these 2 characters that are on the front page as a Calaveras Enterprise.
I've never seen them before.
Don't show them to the sheriff. There might be a...
Yes.
It's for people like those, George, that we're building a new jail.
However, they are the new official pictures of 2 of our supervisors. If you look at the county website, thank you for the professional photographer who assisted us with the others, but this looks to be superior.
This is better. Thank you for that, George, I think. So, anyway. Going on to item number 5 then, if we're through with public comments. We have approval of a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, regarding the acquisition of property for Calaveras County Courthouse. the administration is bringing this to us. And just for point of information, we have an item 6 and an item 6A. We will be taking item 6A in front of 6 at the discretion of the chair, because the item 6A is also concerning some issues about this, the county jail and courthouse. We have a lot of staff here waiting for that item, and we'd like to get them back to their jobs if we can. So we have somebody presenting on item 5.
Well, a small point. This agreement has been, as far as I was concerned, settled for several weeks. It's been on the agenda and been continued so that the other agreement that you'll be taking up, the annexation agreement, could catch up with it and you could consider both at the same time. In printing it out this morning to be in the signature format, I realized that on section 2, there was a date we had not yet agreed upon. So this agreement provides for the county to sell about 7 acres of property for the court facility. It leaves working out. I'm sorry?
By
what?
the property.
We don't have anything in our board packet on this.
Yeah. You said that it provides for the county to sell 7 acres of property.
To the courts.
Oh,
Yeah, it's part of what we've acquired.
This item was originally agendized on February 10th.
okay. Excuse me, I thought you had us selling it to an independent partner.
Okay, I think that what we're all struggling with here is we have an item that's listed here that we don't have. I didn't retain it from the previous time that we saw it. So can we take a minute and get that agenda?
Sure, have more copies of the memorandum.
Well, it's all right with the chair. Why don't we take like a 5-minute recess and read it?
All right, we're going to be breaking for 5 minutes to make sure that...
It might help if I just finish my comment.
All right.
Because there is one thing that needs to be fixed in this agreement. The agreement, among other things, it contemplates that we will transfer about 7 acres of the property behind us to the AOC for the courthouse. It leaves the details of that transaction to the future. And in section 2, it requires that agreement, the future agreement on the details of the transfer of the land, be worked out at a future date. That date has not been resolved yet. I just realized that this morning. In the copy I just gave you, which I hadn't intended to pass out, but I put somewhat arbitrarily, I put the date of June 30th in there. That date needs to be agreed upon with the AOC. And so what I'm suggesting is that if you approve the agreement, you just let me work out the date of that needs to be put in section 2 for the future transfer of the property. Have I thoroughly confused everyone?
Well, I think what I hear you saying is that this agreement, as we see it, boils down to an agreement to agree in the future.
It does.
Okay.
On that point, it does. Yes.
All right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Jones at this point? Do we still want to take a few minutes to read through this?
Yes.
I'd like to look at it, yes.
Okay. All right. This meeting will be in recess for about 5 minutes.
Russ, I think we're going to be a while on this. You might want to do this conservancy and let them get to 20 minutes. It's going to be handed out of here. I think this is going to take a while. Huh?
No,
What do you think?
I think let's just do this. I don't think it'll take that long.
Okay.
It's either up or down. We got one or we don't.
All right. We are about 15 minutes into a 5-minute break. Apologize for that. But okay, the meeting is back in session, and we have had a little bit of discussion up here about the sequence of events here, and it seems that item 5 is somewhat contingent upon the results of our discussion and our actions on item 6A. So it's been suggested, and I agree, that we should deliberate here on the will serve annexation agreement first. Is that the pleasure? Okay, so let's, for, in case nobody's following the sequence of events here, we're going to go at this point to item 6A, which is the will serve annexation agreement. So do we have comments on this item?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to dual exposition on this item and set it in context with the other one. We need, in order to proceed with the construction of the jail and courthouse facility, we need to accomplish two things at a minimum. One is to obtain wastewater services to the site, and two is to effect the transfer of property to the state in order to have a facility for the courthouse. Those are the two items that are before you now, wastewater and property transfer. As Supervisor Tryon noted, if we are unable to obtain wastewater services, it makes moot our ability to use the site, so you have no need to go on to the property transfer. That's why we're taking these items in order. Negotiation of what's called the Will Serve and Annexation Agreement, which is a document which will enable us to receive the wastewater treatment services from the San Andreas Sanitary District, has been it's been a long process. A lot of people have been deeply involved, including County Counsel's Office, the Sheriff's Department, our consultant Jim Heminger, Kitchell, and the council and staff and members of the board of the San Andreas Sanitary District. And the document before you is not done without a lot of consideration. I'd like to just discuss briefly the terms of the item, and I'll go into what the county's obligations are and what the sanitary district's obligations are. The county will pay all costs associated with seeking and obtaining LAFCO approval of annexation of the property into the district. The county will pay a capacity charge of $1.1 million required for construction of treatment plant upgrades and improvements to provide additional capacity. The county will pay $780,000 for the design and construction of new effluent storage ponds and dispersal fields. The county will pay $75,000 into a fund that the sanitary district will use for the purchase of replacement disposal property as required under the sanitary district's ordinances. The county agrees that we will include specified pretreatment and flow control facilities in the jail design and construction. We agree that wastewater service for the existing jail will be disconnected after the inmate population has been transferred to the new jail, in effect using current jail wastewater capacity, applying that toward the wastewater service at the new jail. That's basically the only way we can get 10 pounds of flour out of a 5-pound sack. And finally, the county agrees to begin paying monthly service charges for the additional capacity beginning on May 1, 2012, or upon completion of the jail, whichever happens first. So if we have the jail up and running by May 1st, we'll be paying the monthly service charges at that time. The bottom line is we won't be paying for service we are not actually using until that date. Hopefully we will be up and running by that date. Finally, the most important point I think to be made here is the county is paying its own way with the sanitary district. This project is not being subsidized by the current ratepayers. We are bringing to the table the capital expenses and capital funds necessary to accommodate our additional wastewater, and we've negotiated that in good faith with the district and its representatives, and we are content that speaks for itself. The sanitary district will expand its treatment facilities sufficient to treat an additional 24,850 gallons per day of wastewater as required to serve the new jail facility. The sanitary district will petition LAFCO to annex the property into the district. The sanitary district will develop and expand wastewater storage ponds and spray fields to accommodate the additional treated wastewater. The district will transfer upon completion of the new jail facility the current capacity of 9,230 gallons per day from the existing jail to the new jail. And finally, for both parties, this agreement is conditioned upon the ability of the sanitary district to comply with the plant's discharge permit requirements as established by the Regional Water Quality Control Board. The district is proposing to increase its rates in order to fund that construction, which is necessary whatever the outcome of this agreement. If the proposed rate increase is to fail, however, the district would be in violation of its discharge requirements and would then not be able to meet its obligations under the proposed agreement. In the Reader's Digest version is that whether or not we approve this agreement today, its implementation and its execution depends upon the outcome of that rate increase. But that is a rate increase which the district must seek regardless of this agreement. The two things don't affect each other except for the fact that our ability to move forward does depend on that agreement. You have some alternatives. You could choose to deny the approval of the agreement. That is not recommended by staff, as guaranteed access to wastewater services is a requisite for state funding of both the proposed new jail facility and the new proposed courthouse. Time constraints associated with the state funding process do not allow for the permitting and development of wastewater treatment facilities other than those maintained by the sanitary district. Your board could direct staff to renegotiate all or part of the attached agreement, seeking amendments to its various terms. Staff does not recommend this course, as the agreement now before the board is the result of extensive, and I underline the word extensive, negotiations between county representatives and the sanitary district, as well as discussions among state and county agencies involved in the project. Your staff does not believe it likely that any further negotiation would yield terms more favorable to the county. And let's see, I know there were a couple of questions raised by Supervisor Callaway. Would you like me just to respond to them here now, or would you like to pose them? How would you like to go?
I gave you my questions. So
there was one question about the financing. We had said in the agenda item it would be paid from jail construction funds. And the question is, which are these? AB 900, the county bond. The AB 900 money really only provides for the construction of the jail itself, along with a local match. So we would anticipate that these costs would be coming out of the Measure J funds. Money is fungible. It's a big pot of money. But if we didn't have the AB 900, it would still come out of the allocation under Measure J. Let's see. There was a question about, in the agreement, there was a question about service for the AOC and the 4,000 gallons, the acquisition of 4,000 gallons per day of wastewater service to the existing court facility. The notion is that we would retain what we have now for wastewater service for this end of the building, that we would be acquiring an additional 4,000 gallons a day, earmarked for the courts, allocated for the time being to this building. At the time the courts are ready to occupy, that 4,000 is taken from here and moved up to the court. So there's no net loss. We don't anticipate a net loss of service here. It's 4,000 added and then 4,000 moved up. And then finally, and I think I addressed this just a moment ago, in the first paragraph of the cover memo, if the proposed rate increase were to fail, the district would not be able to meet its obligations, et cetera. And if the rate increase is not approved, the answer is that this project will not be able to move forward on that site, and we would probably be forced to move back to some sort of engineered or on-site solution for that, which takes the time frame way beyond what the state
and
is
that
ready
would
to
be
tolerate.
for the jail, not for the courts, though.
Well,
because the courts have the district's giving the courts the connection capacity.
The issue is, though, that we've predicated, the courts have predicated its project on our having a site with sewer service to it. Yes, it's true that the courts, we could transfer the property to the courts, and they might have the theoretical access for wastewater treatment, but there's no budget to build a line from the top of the hill down to here. And the other part about this whole project is co-location of courts and county in the adult detention facility. And so to divide them up would again be tantamount to torpedoing the project.
Thank you, Mr. Lawton.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, wait a minute. I mean, I just need to say, or get a clarification. If 218 does not pass, I'm not real clear what that means. I mean, if the voters of the district say more than 50% say no, what does that say to the district? And does that then mean if it's no, and
This agreement is void.
the agreement, okay. So again, it goes back, and it's something I said when we were having our meetings, what are the options for the court? I mean, for the Justice Center, having our own sewer system of some kind. And
it's a theoretical, it's certainly a theoretical possibility. It would sever the jail, it would sever the jail and the courthouse. I think those two projects would have to proceed not in a coordinated manner because of the timelines would change and the locations would probably change for the projects if the sewer rate is not approved. The county could, and again, we've looked at about a 2-year time frame for us to get through the permitting process to develop our own solution, a county solution to the wastewater here that doesn't rely upon the sanitary district. And the cost will probably exceed by a fairly significant margin the approximately $2 million, $2.2 million that we're looking at now to cooperate and collaborate with the sanitary district. So it's time and money. Anything can be solved if you have enough time and enough money. We could do it.
What is the guesstimated cost if we had to do that?
I think we're probably looking at least $4 million to have to build our own wastewater system just to serve the jail.
Not the courts or the Justice Center.
Right.
The $4 million. Well.
And then we would operate, or we would dedicate it to San Andreas or some other CCWD, or the cost to maintain it.
That's a fair question that I'm not able to give you an answer to. If we build it, they will come. I don't know that we would deed it over to anybody or whether we'd operate it on our own. That's again really a theoretical question. Given what the impact would be on the project, there'd be plenty. In the 2-year period, we would be waiting for permits. We'd have plenty of time to decide what we did with it after we built it.
Any other questions for Mr. Lawton?
I have some questions.
Yes.
Staying on the point we're on, how much money would we have invested that would not be able to recoup between now and the time the Prop 218 process is completed, and such that if it failed and this document becomes null and void, how much money would we have invested that we would not be able to recoup?
Well, it kind of goes to how we would apply it. We would be able to go ahead, and I'm not sure about if there's a time limit for us on the AB 900 money. I don't believe there is in the same manner there is for the courts. We could go ahead with the jail. We would not lose money. We would lose time, Tom. If this thing goes down, it puts the county back to square one to some degree on the jail, but it really torpedoes the courts. Our money, our county money, wouldn't be wasted in any event. We'd still, I think, be able to go ahead with jail construction of some form on some site, but it would have to be with a different wastewater capacity. That's where we would be. We wouldn't be the ones in a position, I think, to have wasted money. But a 2-year, looking at close to a 2-year gap in time, could imperil our AB 900 money, and would probably, in that case, necessitate construction of a smaller facility on a less desirable configuration.
Okay. A couple other questions here. Basically, we're paying almost $2 million to the sanitary district to achieve what we're attempting to achieve here, which is annexation and having the capacity to process the flows. I noticed in the court agreement, it had a not to exceed 200,000 as the court's contribution to sanitary considerations. I don't see in any of this a not to exceed number. I mean, how open-ended is this?
This agree, our payments to the sanitary district, this is the cap on the.
Okay, this is the not.
This is the capital, yeah, these are the capital.
This is a not to exceed number.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't say that, but that's what was negotiated. In other words, if for some reason it comes in at a greater amount than this, it's not our obligation to pay that.
That's my understanding, yes.
Is that?
It does, that's correct. It doesn't say that because that is the number.
That is the number.
It doesn't go over that or under that. That is the
Okay,
agreement.
so we have a fixed amount
Yes.
that we're dealing with. Okay, then the next question I have is someplace in here. I think both the 1.1637 and the 780 has to be paid like within 15 days or something.
Right.
Of this agreement. So we're paying basically $2 million up front.
Yes.
Do we have any control then of that $2 million once we cut a check for $2 million and hand it to the sanitary district? In other words, do we have some follow-up so that we can see it as being spent wisely, that the project that the sanitary district is doing is within the cost? Because quite frankly, the sanitary, I mean, we can give them $2 million up front, but if the project, comes in over budget or something and the sanitary district can't pay the difference, and they say, well, we just can't provide service because the state's going to take away our discharge permit, then we're out $2 million. So do we have some way of sort of monitoring that the money's being wisely spent, that the project's within budget, that, so we're not just giving them $2 million and just totally walking away from it?
The budget, the project cost to begin with is something that our wastewater consultant and our project manager have taken a look at. They're comfortable with the numbers. These weren't numbers that were pulled out of a hat, and the numbers themselves were reached as a result of negotiation with professional staff and the department. So we have a level of confidence with the budgets that were given to us. It's not that they're not going to walk away making $700,000 on the deal.
Well, my worry is, you get $2 million. The sanitary district does not have the financial capacity if this thing comes in, $1 million over budget. And you can say that these numbers are not to exceed, but then they lose their discharge permit and we're out $2 million and we don't the sanitary district can't accept our sewer contribution. So I'm just wondering how, once you give them $2 million up front in 15 days, do we have, usually
we have a
construction project, you get draws or you get something so you can kind of monitor it as it's going. We're just doing, here's a check for $2 million.
Supervisor Tryon, Mr. Sherman is here from the Sanitary District Board. Maybe he can shed some light on your concerns. Yes, by all means.
Basically, the rate increase was required by the state water board who's funding our upgrade project. Okay? I think once this project is done, the community is going to find that they've got some of the best rates in the state of California. After the project is done, we're doing everything we can to see that the rate increase goes into effect. The rate increase does not affect our discharge permits. It affects whether or not we get the loan. So some fine lines in the details here, but if we don't pass the rate increase, I believe this agreement is null and void.
It's null and void, and I'm not sure the point was made, but the money we're paying is refundable if that happens.
Yeah, and if the rate increase doesn't go into, I believe all your money is refunded by the district.
The plus or minus $2 million is refunded. But okay, I understand that. That's not my greater concern. My greater concern is that we write a check. On most construction projects, you get as they go forward, you get a draw kind of thing. I mean, we're doing $2 million up front, and then we have no more oversight of how the $2 million and the project is progressing. And I guess my concern is that the project comes in and it's 20% over the budget, and there's another $400,000, and we have a not to exceed basically amounts in here that we've budgeted, and then you say, well, it's so over budget, and we can't, and the sanitary district can't afford to pay the overages, so we're going to stop construction on the expansion. I guess that's my concern.
Okay, the plant upgrade is one project, and serving you guys is something that is above and beyond the plant upgrade. We are dealing with the plant upgrade. Okay, that's our problem. All the money that you guys would be paying us is for facilities that are specific to serving the court jail project. Okay, those amounts we feel are known. We don't feel that those amounts are going to change.
Okay, and we feel the same way. Our people have told us that there's a very, very high comfort level there.
Yeah.
Okay. The only other thing I saw in here that struck me as a little bit open-ended, I understand, and it's appropriate that we pay for the cost of annexation to LAFCO, but you have something in here about other inspection fees where we pay $10,000 into a deposit, and then as necessary, additional $10,000 will be paid if it's necessary. Well, I take it those are just basically the normal inspections that you will be doing during a normal construction project.
Within a project, it's the same. Yeah, it follows what we have for our ordinance, our operating ordinance. So, yeah, we are. This is a partner deal. We're looking forward to it, and we just hope it works really well for everybody, including
I understand. I guess
residents.
The part that leaves me the most uncomfortable is $2 million up front.
I don't blame
you. Any more sort of oversight of the project by the county. I would just hope that the county can be kept very fully informed of how the project's going forward.
I'm sure you will be.
Okay.
Supervisor Walensky, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple of, Tillman, excuse me, while you're up here, I thought I'd take advantage of the moment and ask a couple of questions that might be related. It seems we have, at least from an election perspective, kind of an unfortunate convergence that on the one hand we have this project over here that's separate and distinct and has specified costs related to it, and on the other hand you have a need for an upgrade. It may be very difficult for the voters of the district to separate the two, and especially given some of the crosswinds that you hear. I'm just wondering how you see this panning out. I know it's not, it's a contingency that we have to put in here, but what are the prospects for this, and how do you go about separating these things in the eyes of the public, and how do you make more clear than it is here even before us today, so that people will not become irate relating to their relationship to either the county or the district? It looks like a kind of tough lineup.
Well, first off, this is a fairly small community, and all the directors live in various parts of the community, and we get a lot of questions from people about this and that. We heard this, we heard that. Most of it, as you know, is not based in fact. And I put out a guest column last Friday in the Enterprise to clear a lot of misconceptions that were going on. And there are some other things that we're not able to share just yet that are all positive, and we will be hitting the paper between now and April 15th pretty steadily, showing people that I feel we really are doing a fantastic job for this community. So we're going to be working hard to make that very clear to the community, and we really don't anticipate a problem with the 218. In fact, the 218 process, according to our attorney, rarely gets defeated in any community, unless you do a really bad job at letting the community know what's going on. So
or unless people are mad to begin with and looking for a vehicle to take it out on you.
Yeah.
Let me add one other question, which we have a certain number of gallons, 24,850 gallons, that have been determined as the capacity increase required for a jail. I'm assuming that means that it's full, that's the maximum that the new jail would be, and that assumes, in addition, that we've built it to a certain size. And is that the 240 number that has been bandied about, or is it the 160, or what? It's 240.
240, that I don't know. Art?
So
Well,
times
40
142.
minus 65 you presently have in your jail, it comes up with the 24,850 gallons. In other words, 142 gallons per inmate per day.
all right, I'm just trying to determine our presumptions in this, and I guess that answers the question.
Well, on that regard, I can tell you that Bill Purley's worked on this a lot. We've worked with Art, and that's the number that I'm an accountant, I don't do water flow, so that's what the powers that be have analyzed and come up with, and we think it's a good number.
All right.
I believe that's the current usage that we use, the current jail per inmate, 142.
Yeah, it's right in that.
Okay.
Consistent with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a second, before you go away, let me just ask one additional question.
I knew I didn't want to be standing.
And that is,
And the chair would request that if Mr. Lytle, when you were responding, that I would prefer that you come up and make your comments in front of the camera and on the mic too. So just don't let it happen again. So okay.
on number 7 here, the county begins paying monthly service charges beginning on May 1st, 2012, or upon completion of the jail. Obviously, upon completion of the jail, we pay. But if we haven't completed the jail and there is no need yet for sewer services, and we are paying 100% of the expansion costs, et cetera, why would we need to start paying May 1st of 2012 rather than upon, the opening of the jail?
I think the assumption there is that the jail will be completed, if it's going forward. We are not trying to extract money out of the county unnecessarily, so I'm not an attorney, Jim and Mr.
If I could add to that question,
Sure.
Give a specific to it. Tulare County built a jail, and actually under this language, it was completed on a certain day, but it took a number of years thereafter to actually staff it, to come up with the money necessarily to put the thing in operation. If we were to find ourselves in a similar situation, what would this language imply?
Well, I think the issue with the units is that they have a value, and given the lack of capacity, they have a rather significant value. And for the county to tie up indefinitely, the data is in there. The data is in there to make sure that the district is compensated and that we actually use these units rather than banking them for an indefinite period of time without compensating the district. We have essentially 2 years of holding on, of having this capacity, which we paid for, agreed.
We paid 100% of the capacity for it.
That's correct.
We paid for the capital behind them, but they exist, and you can't hold without some kind of sunset date, without compensation, those units, those EDUs.
Okay, we're only talking about number 7 here.
And I think it's about $2,000. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say it's around $2,000 a month. It's not a.
That's common practice, even though I'm not here representing another district. After 6 months after you buy EDUs, we start charging you. It's common practice in Tuolumne, Amarillo County, and everywhere. So actually, you guys are not being required to what a resident normally would be required to. And I got a comment on this 218 process. We're currently involved in negotiations with the State Water Resource Control Board to receive stimulus package funding, and that's going to have a significant impact on the rate increase that we have proposed on the table. The San Andreas is classified as a disadvantaged community, less than 80% of the medium household income, and also we have less than 20,000 residents. And that puts us in a whole different ballgame. It changes the loan from a 20-year loan to a 30-year loan at 0% interest, and it also makes the district eligible for grants. Now, we're not going to know about that until after the 218 process goes through. And the reason why we're the first state in California, unfortunately, because of the Colfax situation, that has to do the 218 before they get the funding. So there was problems in Colfax. They ended up finally passing it. But San Andreas is being required to go 218 before the loan and the grant process, which is coming up. It's kind of good because it got delayed, so now we're eligible for the stimulus package because the policy for the stimulus package is currently in draft form, and it's going to be approved on March 17th at the State Water Resources Control Board. So that's going to change our rates. So I know they look really high right now, but they're actually, in reality, not going to be very high at all. But like Tillman says, we can't really tell you exactly what the numbers are, but they're going to be significantly less. I mean, we're talking maybe between $3 and $8 a month. So that is going to have a major effect. I know we did a story with the enterprise to try to give everybody an idea of what's been going on behind the scenes, but we've been lobbying on these guys since November.
Okay, for the record, this is Mr. Bill Purley, board member of the sanitary district. So
Non-CCWD.
not on CCWD, no.
I mean, but that's the good news that's going to be coming out as far as San Andreas Sanitary District is #1 in the state of California for the Obama stimulus package.
Okay, your comment, if I can jump in here, your comment about the usual and customary practice. So once you have signed that you're going to take the services that you begin to pay for the EDUs or the gallons, that I guess that's why the court system is going to be obligated to start paying for their 4,000 gallons, their assumed 4,000 gallons a day, commencing in June of 2009. So they'll be paying for those gallons, those future gallons from 2009 all the way to 2012.
Yeah, because technically we already have the capacity, we have the ability to serve you. And I think the reasoning behind the delay on charging you guys instead of the 6 months was technically the upgrade hasn't been completed. So technically we can't guarantee sewer service until the upgrade is completed. So that's why they're delaying that. It's not, you guys aren't getting a special deal out of it. That was the reasoning behind the dates on that.
Okay.
And the situation with the State Water Resources Control Board isn't a capacity issue, it's a permit issue, and it's not really a negotiable item with the state. There's standards that have to be met on the discharge into that river over there, and CCWD happens to be one of the downstream users as well as Stockton East. So whether the ratepayers decide to protest this or not, the upgrade is going to go in down there. And if the state has to step in and make us do it, they will. So that's kind of the gun they've been holding to our heads all along here. So, but the good news is because of the stimulus package, San Andreas is going to reap the benefits of significantly lower rate increase in potential grants money for this whole thing.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Supervisor Tuffanelli.
Under Article 3, I see a charge of $187,320.
That's for the courts.
That money is not over on the discussion items. It's not included in any of those.
It's money that
we're paying. The county's paying.
We're advancing that to the courts to be repaid by the courts. They're in a situation where they need us to stand in for them, but that's part of the agreement that we front the 187 and they turn around and will restore it to us.
That figure is going to be shown in this agreement, the MOU that we're going to be dealing with next?
Yeah, it is. It's 1.3.1
in the MOU.
It's a different number. We rounded it up to $200,000.
Not to exceed.
Oh, that's why I didn't see it in the MOU.
Yeah, we had the 187 was the estimate, but all things being equal, we decided to have enough to exceed.
All right.
Okay, is that Mr. Purley sit down? I guess he's through. Okay. Any other questions? Hello, Mr. Walker.
Michael Walker, Undersheriff. I just want to remind the board that under AB 900, within 90 days of completion of construction of the jail, it has to be operational. So, Steve, you mentioned about the situation in the other county. AB 900 is pretty clear on the fact that 90 days after completion of construction, the jail will be staffed. So,
but it will be staffed at the. It must be the minimum staffing is for the amount that the AB 900 pays for. Is that correct?
Correct.
That'd be the 160.
Correct.
And then the additional 80 cells or 80 beds that the county is building on our own initiative. There's more flexibility there.
That's correct.
I think it's mine.
You ready for a motion?
I thought I knew how to use a mic. I suppose so. Any comments from the audience here about this issue? I'm going to move away.
I move that the board authorize the chair to execute the will-serve annexation agreement between the county, the AOC, and the San Andreas Sanitary District.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Guys, for lack of a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we have an executed agreement between the courts and the county, and the will serve.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask one question, or make a statement? I guess one of my main concerns is how we're going to come up with the operational costs to operate this new jail once it's completed. And the department early on put forth that, well, one of the ways we'll do it is we'll have excess capacity, and we'll take in inmates from other jurisdictions. But, and I don't know how long this will last, but I've been reading some accounts in the papers where fairly large jurisdictions are closing wings of their jails because of budgetary constraints. And then we have the federal situation where, the federal judge is asking that state inmates be released to meet capacity constraints at the state level. And I guess I'm getting a little concerned because I think when we last spoke, the estimated operating cost for operating the jail upon completion was something, correct me if I'm in error here, was something around $2 million. And at some point, we're going to need to start to address the operational costs of what we're doing here. And obviously, the budget we have at this present time does not have $2 million in general fund revenues to open a new jail. So I'm kind of wondering if the department is doing some further analysis on meeting the operational costs when the jail is complete.
L.A. County's talking about closing down their main jail at this point for budgetary purposes. I think Tulare County has shut down a piece of a facility. I'm not sure to what extent. Those are the only two that I've heard about. But the AB 900 beds, the 160 beds, we got to get moved in there. We got to start keeping some people in jail. The 80 beds, we have flexibility. Our plan has always been to look at every option in the world how to make money off those beds. The one thing we cannot afford to do is build 240 beds and immediately fill them up with county people. Our needs assessment says we need, at 2011, 160 beds. We need to manage that. We need desperately to manage it. We're looking, the leases on beds from the state, other counties, the federal government will continue to look at all those. We're also looking with probation to start a charter school. We're looking at every way humanly possible to make money in that. If all those things end up falling flat, we're going to run that 160 beds. We've got to, just for the safety of this community. And we will do whatever we have to do to make sure we staff that thing. Minimum staffing levels that the state dictates, we will pay close attention to that, and then we'll staff it with what we can afford to staff it. But we've got to bring some legitimate threat of incarceration into this community. And we're rearresting 54% of the people we release early. While they should still be in jail, we're rearresting 54% on new charges. We're creating new victims constantly, and we've got to stop doing that. We will find a way to staff that 160, and we're looking at every option in the world on finding any source of revenue humanly possible that we can make with that other 80 beds.
I want to remind the board, before the county applied for AB 900, this was discussed, a condition of the grant, and the board did a resolution, if I remember correctly, that we would fund the jail. So the biggest cost, if I remember, was medical, because over 100 you need 24/7 medical, if I remember, Sheriff.
That's correct.
So,
medical is a terrible cost that but there is a move on the federal level to allow federal funding to fund Medi-Cal for inmates. First time ever, that would be a tremendous help. But also, we've started seeing interest. I mean, we have CMFG, who's our medical contractor, $300,000 a year now. They're the only game in town for such a small facility. We're getting interest from other outfits, including our local hospital, that may be very interested in the medical contract with the new facility. So the original, I think it was $1.2 million, something like that for medical. We could see a significant reduction because there is competition now, which will be helpful, but that's a cost we don't.
I mean, I think Supervisor Tryon's right, that we need strategies in place. And, those need to be presented, even to remind us at budget times, because we need to be able to plan for it. 2012 is not that far away, but it was a commitment that this board made, so.
Supervisor Walensky, do you have a question?
It's not a question, it's just a statement. It strikes me that we set the course for this and are, in fact, heavily committed to it for the reasons that the sheriff mentioned. At the precise same time as the world around us has changed dramatically, and it means that our economics in this county are changing dramatically, and we don't even know where we're going to be in 3, let alone 6 months, let alone the year and a half hence. I don't think that we should revisit the reasons why we need a facility that is vital to our safety here. But I do think that we are going to have to develop strategies to deal with the new realities that we haven't even got our heads around. The state's changing, the nation is changing, and the world is changing, and any jurisdiction that decides that it's going to push forward with all things, or even its most important things, without a strategy that acknowledges the circumstances around us, will surely lead to ruin. So my hope is we can have some very careful discussions about all the implications for this to preserve both the goals of having a justice center here and which would include the jail and the court, and I would also hope significant preventive measures, or I've always favored strengthening our approach to dealing with recidivism, which strikes me as a function of two things: how we treat people once they're released, and that's the probation department in some large measure, and secondly, how people get in there in the first place, which seems to me based on various forms of addictions in large part. So how we deal with that is part of a comprehensive approach to trying to ultimately save money and deal with what we have, the resources that we have, efficiently. I don't think this is the time or place for that full discussion, but I would hope that we would be developing those through the budget process, and maybe even special to this circumstance, because that we haven't talked about it since we made a commitment in a whole different world.
Okay. I agree that this probably isn't the time for that discussion, but since you brought up the issue of the medical, I think that I'm right that we're coming up on the annual renewal for that medical contract. If memory serves me correctly, we approved it, I don't know, 10 months ago or so. It was represented as being that there's those three initials, DS something or other, that you just said, that takes care of the currently in our current facility. I would really encourage you to put out a request for proposal for medical services to test the waters for that competitiveness, give the facility across the street a chance to compete. If they were successful, get some familiarity with their methodology, and just we have a unique opportunity here to test it out.
The hospital here really didn't have an interest in our jail serving the day-to-day medical needs, but I think now that they've contracted with CDCR, I think they're seeing a lot more interest in it, and they will certainly be on our list of people we approach for a bid.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have the next item to discuss here, and this is our item 6A. Oh, excuse me, that we just did 6A. We're back to item 5, I think.
The memorandum of understanding
yes,
between the county and the AOC is intended to be a framework for our future relationship on this project with the court. The heart of the agreement is that we, as I said before, we will be transferring about 7 acres to the AOC for the use of the court facility. The details of that transaction are yet to be worked out, in part of necessity, because we know within, I guess, 95% certainty where that 7 acres are located, but until the design of the 2 facilities is further along, that the exact footprint is subject to some change. So this agreement provides for a future exchange of property, and that's the date that we need to resolve that. I'm going to ask the board, if you approve this memorandum, that you allow me and the CAO to negotiate a date that will work for both the county and the AOC for the completion of that transaction. That transaction will then come back to the board for final approval. So we would be transferring 7 acres. It obligates the county to take a charge of and complete the CEQA requirements. We believe that that's virtually been done. To the extent that the footprint changes, that may or may not need to be addressed further, but as far as I know, I think we've completed the CEQA review. The memorandum obligates the county to provide for the infrastructure to the new facility, the joint facility, which would include the roads and electricity and sewer that will serve both facilities. And then finally, at the request of the AOC had an issue with regard to funding. I don't know the details, but the request was made that the county essentially front the money to pay a portion of the sewer service capacity charge pending funding by the AOC of that amount. So those are the four features of the memorandum. In return, I think the motivating factor was that it was important to the board, as we understood it in the county, that that if at all possible, these two facilities be co-located on that property for the many efficiencies involved. And ultimately, when the court is able to move out of this building, then this building will revert back to and be available for county use. So
we're not transferring any of the sewer capacity to the new jail from this building, I assume?
No.
Okay, we're holding on to that.
That's why we paid for 4,000
right
additional.
Yeah, actually that point was made in the previous discussion. The AOC is responsible for paying those charges. Part of the joint agreement is to acquire additional capacity for the court. That's the responsibility of that is going to be with the AOC, not the county.
Supervisor Toffenelli, you have a question?
Yeah, on this item 5, under background proposed for MOU, item B, it has a date of February 15th, 2010, construction start date.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm looking at the
right.
piece of information that was given me with dates on it, and the jail construction phase does not start till May 1st, 2010.
Right. Thank you for pointing that out. And actually, Art Lytle mentioned that to me as well this morning. We've had a conversation this morning with the AOC representative, and that date will be changed to June 15, 2010.
So if we start construction on May 1st, 2010, and they start construction 30 days later, what you're proposing here, and we are supposed to have infrastructure up to their sites.
Minimal infrastructure sufficient for them to have construction access.
So construction
not full
roads.
Infrastructure, no.
Right.
Just construction access.
So following up on what Gary said, it's still hinged on their getting funding.
That's correct.
So if they don't have the funding on June 15th, I mean, is money in the bank,
Perhaps I can
Judge?
help explain that, yes. Judge Winning. Our facility was one of the ones that was selected, and there is funding within the administrative office of the courts for this. This is not general fund. This is not dependent upon anything. By way of a small background, whenever anyone pays a fine, there are also penalty assessments that go to that, and some of those assessments go for jailhouse construction, some go for courthouse construction. When the state took over the courthouses, the obligation for courthouses, they swept those funds. And there are now funds that go in as each new fine is paid that go into a fund, and there was a fund that they now have. Our project is being funded out of that money that the AOC actually has. It's not general fund money. It's not contingent upon the budget. It's actually money that is there. The reason why they're requesting that that the county front the money for the sewer is the funds come out in certain sequences, and when construction funds come out, then there will be money available for the sewer, and that's when AOC will be repaying the county for its advance of those funds. There's no funds available at this point because we're only in site selection and acquisition phase this year. We're not in construction. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Walensky.
I had one sort of narrow question. On the CAO's memo of February 10th, we have under county benefits, item 2, talks about the AOC has an equity interest in current county courthouse building. The value of that interest would be surrendered to the county as part of the purchase price for the new court facility site. Do we have in a volatile value market, do we have a date upon which that value is going to be determined? Is it now? Is it sometime in the future? And how do we fix that? And what's the process by which that valuation will be determined?
We haven't fixed a date. The date will be as of the date of the transaction. It'll be a negotiated a number, and I think it'll be a function of real estate appraisals. This is not an easy real estate appraisal project. We've done an appraisal which has not been public, and I think the AOC has done an appraisal which I'm not sure has been made public. In any event, those appraisals will have to be updated, and we'll sit down and negotiate a number. I suspect that as of right now, those numbers are pretty close, but I don't know what the future will bring.
Following up on Steve's question, when the states took over the courts, as I recall, this building was owned by the county, and then the courts bought the building from the county. Do you know what that dollar amount was, and why would we use that as a guide?
Actually, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on Jim Jones a bit, but actually, the state, the county has always had an obligation to house courts. That was an obligation the county had. When the state agreed to take over future courthouses, all the counties had to transfer their courthouses to the state. Part of what we did in order to hopefully get a court was the county agreed to donate what was then the library site. The state has agreed to, in essence, give credit for that back to the county and give a value to this courthouse. So they didn't have to, but they're agreeing to now give you credit for the courthouse, and that's the negotiation that Jim is talking about at value. But actually, the court, or the facilities that the court occupied were to be transferred as part of this agreement between counties and states, for the state to then take over future obligations for court housing.
So there was no dollar amount?
There was no dollar amount.
It was just a transfer?
All the counties just transferred facilities, or are in the process of doing that. There are still some that haven't done that, and there's penalties that are accruing to those counties in terms of maintenance of effort. Ours did transfer, and we did not suffer any additional maintenance of effort.
That's correct. That transfer.
Are you
was
agreeing
required
with the judge?
I want it noted on the record.
In this one instance, that transfer was required throughout the state by state law.
Okay.
There was no exchange of money, and no value was placed on it. It turned this building into what I've considered like a condominium. The court has control, exclusive control over their portion, the courtroom and the security area. We have the part that my office is in, and then we have a common area. So that's the current status, and that would change. That would revert back to county full
And I guess
control.
when you do an appraisal, you're taking all that into consideration.
Yes.
On the building. And also, I would assume, since we're giving 7 acres for a new court building, the appraisal does not include the value of the land under this building. Is that correct?
Well, I think that the appraisal includes whatever goes into the value that makes up the building, and I would think it would include the land.
Well, if we're giving land for
we're not
court,
giving, we're selling. There'll be a price associated with the 7 acres.
Okay.
Which will also be subject to negotiation, appraisal and negotiation.
Okay, any other questions from the board or from the public? Okay, if not, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that...
This is more law enforcement than I can handle in one day.
Public safety, criminal justice.
Okay, the motion and the second is to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Calaveras County and the Administrative Office of the Courts regarding the acquisition of property for the new courthouse. Are all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0. Okay, we have one more thing on the public agenda here. There's been a request for a little necessity break before we get into that, so, okay. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Well,
how we manage this is we have 6 subregions, and this is significant to you because this is how we do our county representation. We have a board of 13 voting members. 7 are 6 on the map here is 6, and you can see that Amador, Calaveras, Tuolumne, and Mariposa make up the south central. Like Chrisman, the resource secretary. I just want to say that Steve has given a lot of time, energy, and leadership to our organization, so we feel very fortunate to have such an engaged county representative on the board. Kudos, Steve.
Yeah, paid her to say that.
So we have, okay, this is in a different order. That's all right. So we are not funded out of the general fund. Another unique thing about the conservancies. So we're taking we're experiencing some of the cutbacks that you're hearing about. We're furloughed 2 months, 2 days a month. So a 10% pay cut for everyone. We're hoping that we won't be subject to the 10 to 20% layoffs that are being discussed in Sacramento. But our main funding source is the California Environmental License Plate Fund. And what that is you've probably seen the Tahoe license plate. All of the conservancies have license plates as well as other agencies. And we are just about to launch our license plate marketing effort. And it's this little bear with a mountain and some trees behind it. And we're going to be going out to people like you, all of the residents of Calaveras County and throughout the Sierra, attempting to sell these license plates because they're a very important funding source for us. And they're one that doesn't get as effective when we get into budget crisis like what the state's experiencing now. Another major funding source.
You said that you're about to launch that. I heard about that about a year ago, and I've been waiting for it to be available. What's the outlook for when I could get a license plate?
That is a great question. The tricky part about this is you coordinate it through DMV. From the day you officially launch, which we have not done, the official launch, you get 1 year to sell 7,500. And if you can't do it, basically your opportunity is gone. So what we're attempting to do is raise the funds in order to really launch with some resources. So within the 12-month period, we can sell the 7,500. So stay tuned. I do hope that we're going to get this thing off the ground in the next few months.
If they sell 7,499, those folks who already got them get to keep them, right? No, really, because if you don't, if it doesn't become enough to be an ongoing issue, you still have to keep the one you have.
Well, what happens is they don't take your money until they have 7,500.
You reserve a plate until they get to that level.
And then once you hit the 7,500, then you're asked to pay and get your plate.
Okay.
I think everyone should send their checks to me and I'll hold them until the 7,500 is achieved.
Along with Marita's margarita.
But
we don't have to give the money up front.
If it is an important, can we have some decorum here? No? I guess the answer is no. If you're looking for those reservations, I'm willing to put my name on it right now. So how do you get that initiated?
What I'll do is is get your name on the list. There's a Sierra Fund started this for us. They're a nonprofit group. They had it up on their website for a long time. I signed up, I think, 3.5 years ago. That's how long we've been trying to get this in motion. So basically what we did is last week realized that the group was having a difficult time raising the money. So we've moved it to more of a committee. We have people around the Sierra now that are involved, our major partners, our regional organizations that are going to help support this as opposed to having just one group do it. So what I can do is get your name on the list, and when we do finally launch, you'll be there, you'll be contacted.
All right,
But
thank you.
when we do launch, you'll hear about it because we'll be on websites and but I appreciate you purchasing one. So the second major funding source is Proposition 84, and as all of you know, those grant funds are on hold for now, but we have received $54 million. We've distributed nearly $20 million of the $54 million that we have to distribute, and some of those funds have gone to Calaveras County already. And then future funding is basically working with our partners in the area as well as contacts in Sacramento and the federal government looking at opportunities to bring more funding into the Sierra Nevada. So we've been involved in grant proposals and that type of thing, and we're continuing to do those efforts. So our program areas, we're very broad, as I mentioned, with sustainability being the mission. So we support tourism and recreation. We protect all of the resources, including physical, cultural, archaeological, historical, and living resources. Preserve working landscapes such as ranching, agriculture, working forests. We work to reduce natural disasters, and in particular, wildfires. Improve water and air quality, assist the regional economy, and enhance the public use of lands owned by the public. So with this, so we have this very broad mission. To date, our only funding source has been Prop 84. The issue with Prop 84 dollars is that everything you fund has to tie back to protecting and restoring the watershed. So we're doing really well on improving water and water quality in the Sierra Nevada. The other ones, we have some projects that address these other program areas, but we're continuing to actively look for additional dollars because we want to be able to have resources in all the program areas. So we've put together an annual report, and I'm going to leave each of you one of these, and it's more like our 5-year report. This is the first year we've done it, and it's recording everything the agency's done in the 4.5 years that we've been around. There's also a CD, so it shows vignettes or small portions of different interviews that have been given by many of our board members, our main partners, some of the staff. And in the board annual report, we actually showcase the CHIPS project. I always get confused as to what CHIPS stands for. The Calaveras Healthy Impact Product Solutions Project. The Conservancy provided a grant to this organization, and we really like this project because it's of employing people that have lost their jobs over the years, and then also just the significance socially when you can employ people to be productive citizens, and then of course the environmental aspect of reducing fire risk and making a healthier forest and protecting the watershed. And in fact, a few months ago, we brought out some representatives from Sacramento, the legislative analyst office, out to this project site, and they loved it. And they're the people that analyze the budget and actually provide advice to the legislators' financial committees. So these are the types of projects we really like, where we can show the economic benefits as well as the social and environmental benefits. So that's page 23. When I give you your report, you can see that. So grants that Calaveras County has been awarded to date, about $300,000 in the last year. We just started awarding grants about a year ago. Has gone to this county. I'm going to give you a 2-pager on what these are, but listed are the grant recipients. One of the projects is Calaveras County Water District, the Highway 4 corridor water and wastewater reconnaissance study. So looking at economy of scale efficiencies for the various facilities to strategically do upgrades and retrofits together. So that's funding the study to do that.
Before you leave that, I understand was put on hold because it was, because of the budget. Do you know, and the study's partially completed, do you know when those monies will be released to complete the study?
So that's right. So we distributed these dollars, and then in mid-December, we're told that we had to put everything on hold. And it's very unfortunate.
Okay, but it's not released yet.
It's not released. And so as soon as we know something, we'll certainly let people know. We've been doing email blasts, giving updates, but at this point, all we know is we're still on.
I understand it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Steve can update us weekly on.
I will give you an update.
I'll certainly, the minute I get any news, I'll be letting the board know on that. But it's you know, anybody who can figure out the state situation on selling bonds is
right. That it'll be in the papers because
Yes.
they've held up millions and millions and millions.
That's right.
Including the Highway 4 bypass project, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not just our little
It's a big number.
agency, it's statewide.
Well, the real question is what is going to happen with the value and the sale of California bonds, and this is completely dependent on that. And sometimes it makes no sense to put that forward at certain times, and this appears to be one of those.
That's right. So the CHIPS project I mentioned, that was awarded through a grant to the Central Sierra Resource Conservation and Development Council. We also have awarded a grant to the Calaveras County Planning Department, and that is to support your planning staff to put applications together to the California Department of Fish and Game and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in order to have the resources to do the biological studies and compile the data for the natural community conservation plans and the habitat conservation plans. And the idea here is that goes hand in hand with your general plan, so you're not needing to stop in your CEQA process and analyze every parcel in your county. You're going to have a database of what you have as far as sensitive species and resources countywide.
I'm familiar with the habitat plan, and we've discussed that as a board. I'm not familiar with the first thing you said, the conservation.
Right. So the state, the habitat conservation plan is part of the federal program.
And we're doing that, I think, as part of the general plan update. Correct me if I'm in error. But you said something about conservation,
Right.
something in front of that.
The State Department, the California Fish and Game, the tool they use is a natural community conservation plan.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's very similar to a habitat conservation plan.
Are we doing both, or are we doing
Yeah,
one?
so the idea would be you develop both plans. There's going to be some overlap, but that way you're
And you're funding both?
Yes, this grant funds both.
Yes, the grant.
Yep.
Thank you.
I should mention for this part, this has been a subject that has caused a great deal of fracas in Calaveras County. Every time a project comes before us and it involves a species or a sensitive habitat, we try to deal with it as if you could solve it all on that property. Without an overarching plan, it benefits neither good projects or the species or the habitat that we're trying to protect. You need to think of it as a whole, and it has to be carefully related to land use and other aspects of it. So this is actually a boost. We didn't have the capacity here in the county, the funding, to be able to approach this in a larger way, and this is giving us at least the opportunity to do so. It might very much reduce the level of friction that we seem to encounter every time a project comes up here and gets hung up on that particular question.
The California Foothills Fire Safe Council also received a grant, and that's to support the Defensible Space Inspection Program. With the funds from the grant, they're to do 4,200 home inspections. And that's working hand in hand with California Department of Fire and Forestry, where they'll mark the trees, suggest what vegetation to get rid of to reduce fuel loads and fire risk on private properties.
I should also add that there are other Fire Safe Council funds that then fund the treatment. So, for instance, there were over 100 seniors homes that had 100-foot clearance based on that type of analysis, and our hope is to expand that dramatically over the next couple of years.
And then Mother Road Land Trust, a grant has been awarded to them to support them with identifying areas of basically resource values in order to move forward on willing sellers for acquisitions and also willing conservation easements on working landscapes and in areas where there's rivers and creeks to be protected, wildlife habitat, endangered species, etc. And then finally, there was a grant that is not listed up here, awarded to the Forest Pacific Land Trust. And that is for working with the owners of the Love Creek Ranch, or working forest, I should say. It's really more forest land. That's supporting the preliminary work to move forward on a conservation easement to protect 300 acres. And that parcel is adjacent to the big trees as well as Forest Service lands along Highway 4. So that's what's been awarded to date, and we just had, we're going ahead with our program because basically when we do get the green light, we want to have viable projects to fund immediately. So this past Friday was our last application due date for this fiscal year. And yesterday at 5 o'clock, we had over 100 applications in. We work very closely with several of the organizations listed here, as well as others in Calaveras County. So we're expecting many more applications from your area. So it's already been mentioned that the Property 4 Fund program has been frozen. And with that, we've had to suspend all of the work on our grants. And even worse than that is even work that had been done, but the invoice had not been processed and the check had not been cut by the state. We're not even able to process those, although we're currently working to try to account for that. And then, of course, we have not been able to authorize any new grants, but as I mentioned, we're moving ahead with evaluating applications so we do have grants once we can fund the program again. So really our focus is collaboration and cooperation with local governments and interested parties. And now that our grant program is on hold, it allows us to have the time to do things like this, get out to board of supervisors and make sure that all of you know who we are and what we're doing in your area. Continuing to provide resources to communities, facilitation, supporting, convening stakeholders around specific problem areas. Most recently, we worked in Calaveras County in your upper watershed area to help form the Calaveras Consensus Group. And with that, bringing together divergent groups, environmentalists, business, Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, several of the state agencies and local government organizations. And our staff had provided a lot of the work on submitting, putting together a funding proposal. So just to give you an idea, it's interesting, we're busier than ever, even though our grant program is on hold. And we're continuing to try to offer those types of services because right now, what's on everyone's mind is we need resources. So that's where we're putting a lot of our effort, is trying to secure, especially some of the stimulus dollars for this year and that. And one in Three Rivers, Tulare County. Auburn is where the bulk of our staff are, and then we also have a one-person office in Susanville. So we have 25 million acres to cover in many communities, so we've spread ourselves out to try to service the areas as well as possible. So with that, are there any questions or any other comments?
Yes, Supervisor Walensky.
I have an observation. Kim described a couple of things that are unique to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, one being the integration in a state agency of local elected officials and personnel, which I think has kind of produced an interesting hybrid, which actually grounds state activities in local realities. But she didn't mention the other thing which I find to be unique about this agency, which is it's actually absolutely dedicated to task, hardworking, and while I'm not denigrating other state agencies, this is a group that actually somehow Jim Branham, who's the director, and Kim and a couple of others who are heading vast regions have put together one of the most skilled and dedicated staffs I've ever seen. I've dealt with almost every state agency, and there's nothing like it. We are really blessed in the Sierra to have this going. And the fact that they turned on a dime the day that they were told you can't be working on these grants anymore, the fact that they moved with almost within 24 hours to doing huge amounts of work on accessing federal dollars outside of the proposition that they were assigned to, and that they helped almost every county in the Sierra to get going on that, I found to be remarkable and unique to this. I think it speaks to the quality, deployment, and the sense of mission of this staff, which I strongly urge people, if they aren't already working with it, to get a chance to experience. It's really a model of effectiveness.
Thank you. Appreciate
And that includes Kim, who's really a tremendous leader in her own region.
Supervisor Walensky, if you recall, I went down to the Bass Lake meeting, and I'm trying to visualize the dais up there, and it seemed like that there were many more people on the podium than are listed here. So
yes, what you have is you have each region with a represented by one of the Board of Supervisors of the county in the rotation. You then have 7, I think that's 6, a total of 6. You have 7 that are other appointed state officials, and then the rest on dais are the people who are Secretary of Interior's appointments, which are 2. That's right now Bill Hay and David Graber. And the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture's appointment, that's one person who sits. These are ex officio members, and that's what fills it out. People in front are staff and people who are managing the operation.
Well, the name that I was looking for but don't see it is Carol Whiteside. She's not on the...
She just
turned down.
Yeah, she stepped down.
Yeah.
Yeah, our county representatives have 2-year terms. Our state have no limit. And with Carol, she's just become too busy. So her last meeting was October. Yeah. And we actually we still have a vacancy. She was our public member. Go ahead and read these.
Page 16, 17.
Oh, wow, look at that.
You're hiding something.
That's in code.
Here.
That's actually in your packet.
If you could just...
I'm giving you a copy of that. It's
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
If it hadn't been for Tim, for getting supervisors on it, Tim Wesley would not have approved this.
Yes. And it turns out to be, even though it was somewhat controversial, it turned out to be a great addition, and it was
really is.
Almost prophetic in nature.
Yeah, I think, the Democratic and Republican compromise brought the sustainability mission and focus to it, and also brought the balance of state and local representation, and I think those are 2 of the strengths of the organization.
Oh, I think so too.
Mr. Harrington has a comment or two.
Hi, Brent Harrington, Interim Community Development Director. Given there were a couple of questions, and this was the main item I came to the board meeting, took a while to get to here today. I thought I'd give you a little history back to, obviously I was at RCRC at the time this was created. Very much involved in the negotiations, very much involved in the discussions. In fact, the structure of the 6 supervisors and whatever actually was written in my office in the back room the night before the legislation. But a little bit of background is the RCRC as an organization was very suspicious of the creation of this organization. In fact, there were several years before it that it failed legislatively. And then what really motivated it is when Governor Schwarzenegger came in and had a 9 or 10 point action plan of what he wanted. The last one was, I'm going to create a Sierra Nevada Conservancy. And politically, that said, it's a done deal. It's going to happen. And so the organization took a somewhat different bent and basically said, what's the best deal we can cut out of this? And interestingly, the one topic that was the most hotly contested item I haven't heard discussed anywhere here, and I think it has proved to not be a problem at all, and that was the fear of supervisors from other counties, fears from this county maybe even at the time, that this was going to be a vehicle to have an organization that could condemn land and take land by virtue of condemnation. And so, in fact, the legislation has some wording that was written by RCRC that basically says they don't have the power of condemnation. What's interesting to me is I guess because of my background in park and recreation years ago, I always kind of secretly wanted to see this thing go. And I remember some discussions with Tom asking me, is this okay? Is this okay? And I have to tell you, I'm certainly not speaking for RCRC. I'm gone long enough, I can't do that anymore. But I think the feedback I get from staff is this has been a ringing success. And the fears that I think existed about creating a monster hasn't occurred. In fact, quite the opposite has happened. It's become a friendly item. I give a lot of credit to Jim Branham. I think I didn't know him before. Well, I knew him when I guess he was at Fish and Game, if I remember correctly, and or wherever he was before. But it has just turned out to be one of those, I think, fairly remarkable developments. And Steve touched on the point that I think is absolutely fascinating. This is one of the few animals or creatures of the legislature that has this kind of combination of local and state government. And while we wanted to have 7 local and 6 state, and we're never able to pull that off, at least my observation, having attended probably a half dozen of the meetings while I was at RCRC, is this has just been a ringing success. So congratulations to Steve being involved with it. Every time I see Jim, I say the same thing to him, and I really think it's turned out great.
Thank you for the part that you played in it. That sounds good. Do you have any more comment?
Well, I just want to reinforce that one point, which everybody thought that this was going to be a big regulatory imposition. And what the work of this body is inspiration and voluntary work. So it's a non-regulatory body. It has no ability. It's not just eminent domain or condemnation. It is that they simply do not have any intention or any basis to regulate anybody. So this is, I guess, to use a hackneyed term and much misused, a coalition of the willing. It's putting people together that want to get something done, each of the counties, and it's all different across California, and it really does reflect that local input, actually hones the work to local concerns and considerations. I've found it to be, I would hope that eventually through some osmotic process that the rest of the state of California could somehow adopt all the rest of the departments, Caltrans being my particular preference. But this modality and this relationship with local government is, I think, absolutely essential and has been the basis for the success. It's a government entity that does not have the power to control or threaten, has money and inspired staff that can get things done, and asks local people what is their pleasure within a clear mission. If you want to look at a grant process that works and that's transparent and has clear criteria, this is one of those. It's a 10-page narrative to start it out on the SOG grants, strategic opportunity. You get not just judged, but assisted. And the ability of small places like ours to compete on a level playing field with the larger and more organized counties, or more staffed counties, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy actually makes up that difference by tremendous staff support in the process. And that's what's allowed us to get in the game here in ways that elude us in other contexts.
Thank you for your involvement in that, Steve. I know it's a lot of work, but I, for one, appreciate it very much. Anybody else have any comments? Thank you, Kim, for coming and giving that presentation. Really enjoyed that. Okay, we have item 7 on the agenda now, review of correspondence, reports of various matters of concern. Starting with Supervisor Tryon.
I do not have anything to bring before the board today, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Walensky.
Locating it as we speak. Today I have the Mental Health Board meeting. Tomorrow and Thursday, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy Board meeting in Chico. On Friday, the first 5 commission meeting, and the Mental Health Board Jobs Committee in the afternoon. And on Monday, the 9th, I have the Calaveras High Career Day, which I understand a number of you will be joining in that adventure.
Yes. Supervisor Toffanelli.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry, one more thing. I also wanted to give a thank you to Calaveras Lumber, which yesterday stepped forward and in support of the Farm to Family and the Mental Health Jobs Committee donated literally hundreds of seed packets, which are now going to be able to be planted in all. There's enough seeds to plant every acre that has been designated for Farm to Family, and they did this. They came forward and said, "Can we help you this way?" They really deserve a great deal of credit, and it's that kind of contribution which is coming from all over the county to make this a real kind of rocket launch. Kind of happening so fast it's hard to keep up with. But secondly, Calaveras High has a club that has voted unanimously to participate, and the Ag Department has agreed to devote the entire greenhouse of Calaveras High to that project, and they'll be doing seed starts for a lot of the other farms and gardens that are being established. So the kids are now involved at a high degree of participation, and the high school stepped up to that. So some of these seeds are going directly over there after this meeting. That's all.
That's great. Supervisor Toffanelli.
Yes, fine.
I don't have anything to report as far as official board duties for this week. I don't serve on as many committees as Steve is. He was talking earlier about
I'd be happy to share.
The committees that he has, and trying to work in a little schedule to do some Follies work, and I guess we're appearing in the Follies with Kathy Mazzaferro.
And sometimes even as we speak here.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Other than that, I'll be appearing Friday and Saturday nights with Supervisor Thomas for the Friends of the Library in the melodrama they have down there. That continues the following weekend, too, on the 13th and 14th. So.
And there's evidence of that effort on the Enterprise website, as probably right now.
I will be. Hopefully it won't be there for very long.
The dogs howling and everything.
And there was reports of after Saturday night that within the 10-mile radius that every coyote is now taken up camp near the Vets Hall waiting for the master of ceremonies to appear. But I will be at Calaveras High with Supervisor Walensky and Supervisor Thomas for a career day. We have a booth set up over there next Monday the 9th. And that's it.
Supervisor Callaway.
I have Ebbets Pass Property Owners Council meeting. I have the Council of Governments. I have Area 12 Agency on Aging. And I have the HRC Food Bank opening Saturday on my calendar. Do I have a wrong date?
I think.
Okay. I'll double check on that. On Monday, I have a California State Association of Counties conference call regarding proposed propositions under consideration for the May ballot. I will be looking to the board. Oh, my 20. Okay, thank you. Prop 1A was to create a new, larger rainy day fund and puts limits on spending growth. 1B, Prop 98 funds, arguably owned by the state, to K-14 districts. I have contacted John Brophy for input on that. The 1C allows the state to borrow money for the general fund for future, securitized by future revenues from the lottery. 1D for 5-year shifts between 1/2 and 2/3 of the cigarette tax away from California children and families, the Prop 10 into general fund. I emailed Karen and from First 5 and asked for input. So, Steve, I don't know if the board's taken any action on that. I'm just looking for feedback for when we have our conference call. 1E to amend the millionaire's tax for mental health services. That's Prop 63. I've emailed Jeannie Boyce and Mary Sawicki on that. And 1F forbids the California Citizens Compensation Committee from raising legislators and state officers' salary when the state's running a deficit. So, anyway, if the board has any comments or thoughts, if you could let me know, I would appreciate that.
Rita, we will have, we're having that meeting on Friday to go over this for Prop 10, so we should be able to get that to you.
Just email me or you, it's fine.
We'll probably take a position at that time.
And just talking, and then just talking about the budget, I just have to say that I'm very concerned that this county doesn't have a strategy for dealing with it. We had a wonderful report from Shirley Ryan, but there's no strategy out there. And I just, Steve mentioned that the Sierra Nevada Conservancy within 24 hours shifted when there was a freeze. We've asked the sheriff to do some strategies regarding funding of the jail. I have not, as a supervisor, heard anything on strategies for Calaveras County. And Mr. Lawton, I have to say I am very concerned because I remember Shirley's presentation being that there was 300,000 plus or minus. We heard from Karen Varney that the May election will cost the county approximately, and she's very conservative, 100,000 plus or minus for the election, that we will get reimbursed, but none of us are going to hold our breath. That means that money would have to come from contingencies, I'm assuming. So where's the strategy for this county to deal with the budget for this balance of this year and for the next? And I have to say that I'm very uncomfortable that I don't think we have one, or if we have one, it hasn't been presented to us for discussion.
We've been working with HR to develop more fully some options for this year, particularly next. And Shirley and I will be back to this board with the results of that, with recommendations for a resource reduction strategy, priorities for departments to observe as they prepare their 09-10 requested budgets, and we'll move forward with the budget process after we've advised the board and secured their input on what kind of a budget they'd like to see brought back to them for consideration.
But that's for the next budget.
Yeah.
I'm saying between now and the end of this year, this budget cycle, should we not have some strategies in place?
And that will come, some of that will come out with our discussions with HR. Because that's the, obviously, that's the single largest portion of the budget.
County budget.
Everything else is tied up in contracts and supplies, et cetera.
Well, I mean, for me, I think the department heads need to know now what they need to be doing. If we're going to be asking them that you're going to have to cut 10%, or like Kim mentioned, that she's on furloughs twice, 2 days a month, and
every other Friday.
So, you know, I just don't have a comfort level, I suppose. And for the departments, the employees, the public, the board, I think we need a strategy in place. And it could be that these are just the options, and the board needs to make those difficult decisions. So I know I sound like a broken record on this, but I'm a broken record.
Is it
That's it.
45 or
45.
33 or long, an LP?
I'm a 45.
Thomas, I wanted to know, before you go and make your comments, if I could address the board regarding the Prop 63 that Marita talked about.
Would you like to do that now? Sure.
Okay, thank you. George Fry. Prop 63 funds, the Prop 63 was developed by Darrell Steinberg, Senator Darrell Steinberg, and that funding was for 1% of $1 million of individual taxpayers that make over $1 million. And all of that funding was for the Mental Health Services Act. And and it was set up so that the state couldn't touch that money, and it belonged to the Mental Health Services Act. And the kinds of things that you have seen that's been addressed here by the Behavioral Health Department in the projects that have been done have vastly helped our Behavioral Health Department in the county. And I just want to let you know that we need to defeat that 1A proposition so that the money cannot be taken from the Mental Health Services Act monies. So I urge you to consider that and support the people in this state who are mentally challenged. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
I just need to comment really on what George is saying. That's what's happening in California, is that we budget by proposition. If somebody wants something, then we budget by proposition. We tie the hands of the legislature every time, because that's all money that has strings on it, and then we're saying, do something. And I know just here in this county, we know the strings on us when we go to budget. I mean, everything's grant specific, and when we just heard a presentation on just another funding source. And when you budget by proposition, which is what we do in California, it gives us no latitude, and we wind up with proposed budget changes due to that. Or we really need a constitutional amendment convention to change the way we do things in California. But I mean, that's just an editorial on my part, so it's not a meeting I'm going to.
Supervisor Walensky.
Being on the mental health or behavioral health board, I wanted to weigh in just for a moment on this. I would not want this to get too tied in with the broader argument about state versus local responsibilities, but in fact, both on the first 5 and Prop 63, both those monies have been used very wisely by local people for local issues. And in my view, returning this kind of dollar to state winds up with, once again, the one-size-fits-all arrangement, which tends to do better in urban areas and leave rural areas completely bereft of both resources and program. In this particular case, you may recall that the state of California decided it was going to shut down its mental health facilities, and that they were going to go to a decentralized, localized kind of almost halfway house, or the residential local centers, and then decided not to fund that. So many years later, after a massive homeless and filling our jails with people who used to be clients, we passed, overwhelmingly in the state of California, passed that proposition to be able to begin to make up for that, what was it, 25 to 30 years of dereliction of duty and high cost to local and state governments, to take this project, which deals with the things the state can't do. They do year-to-year budgets, and they do not, except for the agency we just described, turn on a dime. They don't even turn their barge around in a river in a year. The only long-term planning that goes on these very vital services is happening at the local level through these funds. To return it gets us back to an annual budget, the process of which we just had to witness. And it certainly doesn't benefit anything on the ground, or very much on the ground, that I've been able to see. So I want to echo Mr. Fry's concern here, which is the loss of these funds would be devastating to a program that's already getting statewide recognition as a rural example of what you can do once you're given half a chance.
Okay.
I might comment also that AB 2034, which was the Homeless Act, the governor wiped out that program and left tens of thousands of people on the street, and that AB 2034 was the law that helped the homeless to get services, and it is no longer going on. It is in court, and it appears at this point that the governor's denial of it will be overturned by the court, which is good news.
Okay, if there's no more comments on that subject, I want to state that I don't have a lot on my calendar for this week. I do want to acknowledge that I had a great performance partner last Saturday night in Supervisor Toffanelli, and I'm looking forward to Friday and Saturday nights for the next 2 weekends. He's a trooper. I didn't. He's just basically a ham. So
you might want to ban cameras in the future.
No, it's been good fun, and I think he could probably get reelected in spite of his performance.
That's a good thing. It's not an election year.
Life-size posters of that, I'm sure.
All right, I think that concludes my comments, and nothing for next week. Let's see. We have a closed session here pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation. So this terminates our public portion of the meeting. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next week.